Hello and good afternoon. I'm Dayo Kefentse and welcome to this edition of Studio Sessions. Now, Studio Sessions is the Globe Content Studio's live stream show where we talk about all things content. The Globe Content Studio is the content marketing agency of the Globe and Mail, where we partner with businesses who are looking to connect their story to audiences by using original content and storytelling that comes from a journalistic approach. Today, I'm joined with Stanleigh and Marcin Zerek. Although it feels like some time ago, it was actually just last Tuesday when the Globe Content Studio debuted TNT, which breaks down to tactics and takeaways, insights into content marketing. That was the title of the event. And for half a day, participants got to hear from and learn from experts at the Globe Content Studio about how to best approach content marketing for the businesses that you're working on. Both Sean and Marcin were both integral to putting this together. We're going to hear from them about what it took to do this, why they thought it was important, and some tactics that you may feel you can, that they think you can use to do the content that you are looking to create. But we're going to get to that later. We're first going to go to Sean because as I've gotten to know Sean in the time that I've been working with him, he has talked about wanting to do this event for a long time. And it finally happened. Sean, you must be feeling great about it now that you're on the other side of it. But why did you want to even pull this off? Why did you want to create an event that was focused on content marketing?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I mean, I'd do it again tomorrow, but I don't think Marcin would want me to at this stage. And I'm not sure about the rest of the team either. Why is that? Well, it's always fun to host an event, first and foremost. In some ways, it's kind of like having a wedding. A lot of planning goes into it. But secondarily, it's our opportunity to really think about the work that we do differently. It's a way to actually step back and give some consideration to the way that we do things and how we can communicate the things that we do to the public. Because we focus a lot on our work and not always necessarily on how we do the work. And so that was sort of the impetus for this was, a way for us to think about the way we do things and then a way for us to communicate the way that we do those things to the clients that we work with, but also to the clients that we might be trying to attract. So the impetus for all this started years ago because for quite some time we've been doing things like studio sessions, which you're seeing on your screen right now, where we had sort of small scale, very short term, like 30 minutes to an hour long sessions where we would pick one topic and really dig into it in the way that we're sort of doing this today. What we hadn't really done before was a kind of large, in-depth, sort of multi-purpose, but also multi-person in the form of a large audience engagement, where we really got to showcase the full depth and breadth of all the things that we do. So the challenge, of course, is that when you are a content marketing agency like we are, you're busy. You have a lot to do. So when Dayo talks about how it's amazing that it's already been a week, it's because doing an event on the side of your desk like we did can be exciting, but also exhausting in a lot of ways too. And so it's not something that you can just do on a regular basis and oftentimes not just plan on a regular basis because of the intensity of the work, but also the cost that's behind it. So this year we managed to find the budget. We managed to make the time and the effort to finally pull this off. It was a bit of a fever dream of mine for years, but of course, it wasn't just my dream, it was the dream of the team. And every single person within the studio and every single person on the trade marketing team that Marcin heads was involved in this. It was, like a real group effort, not just to ideate this thing, but to bring it to life. And really the process started with an advisory board. So Andrew Saunders, who's the Chief Revenue Officer of the Globe and Mail, was at an event with me, and we were sitting at a table with one of our clients and we were talking about tactics and takeaways. And he said, it might not be a bad idea for you to have this client and a few others at the table as an advisory board to dig in to what they would want from an event like this. So don't just assume what participants would want, but actually ask some of those attendees or potential attendees what they might want to see and hear from an event like this. They gave us a ton of really great feedback after we put that together with the client at that event and 3 other clients as well, and really enabled us to shape the event beyond just the way we saw it, but also in a way that participants wanted to see it. And that's what really led to the title, which was Tactics and Takeaways, because the number one takeaway from that advisory board was, don't tell us about how to create content. we hire you guys to do that. That's what we pay you for. Tell us about, tactically speaking, how content marketing is going to benefit us and why. So that's how we ended up where we did. And that was the biggest learning from this whole
Yeah.
show.
And actually, I was just as you were talking about it, I was thinking that it's possible that people take content marketing for granted to a certain extent. Like we read a lot as people who work in this industry. You just read and you're taking things in, but do we ever think about how and why content is created, the strategy behind it? This is what it sounds like you, the advisory board, really wanted to learn.
Yep, I would say you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's exactly what they were looking for. And ultimately, more than anything else, I think was the takeaways piece, which is we want to walk away from this thing knowing more than when we came in. And I think that's so important now, especially in live event settings, which this was, although we had a hybrid version and we allowed people also to register to receive a recording of the event, which we can share at the end of this session. But like first and foremost, if you are going to make your way out of your home or your home office and to a place that is not your workplace, battling traffic, dealing with
All the
elevators,
things.
being worried about COVID, whatever the case may be, it takes a lot to get a person into a room these days. So if you're going to get people into a room, you better make it worth their while. So we were very focused on that too. Marcin can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, we're going to actually talk to Marcin about that because Marcin, as head of the trade marketing at Globe Media Group, you get a lot of asks to help with a lot of things. And so when Sean came with this idea to do an event in April to focus on content marketing, besides, whoa, it's going to be a lot. What else were you thinking? What, as a trade marketing head, did you need to be considering when pulling this off?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as Sean mentioned, I think the advisory board was a really good kind of tool that we used. And Jess actually talked about it, our content lead at the content studio last week, about people first approach in the content that the studio does. And so we take that approach for events as well. So I think really understanding what their problems, challenges, how they want to receive the information, the different formats, structure of the event, all of that I think is really important. So we took that into consideration. And we asked those questions in the advisory board meetings as well. So how they want to receive the content, how the room should be set up, what kind of food and bev. So all of that kind of we took into consideration for sure. And I think really understanding the customer and the experience. So really making sure that our invite communications are really clear, that we're really clear on our agenda, who's speaking, what's going to happen. I think all of that is really important, and just being kind of upfront with that, and then making sure the experience is really good. So I think looking at the check-in experience, the right food and beverage. And then with Sean and I, we were just really upfront in terms of kind of like what the objectives are, what the outcomes are that we had internally, and those were really good kind of North Stars for us for sure.
So Sean is going to offer some content tactics and takeaways at the end of this chat, which is going to be in about 30 minutes or now in about 20 minutes. So stay tuned for that. You don't want to miss that because this is really why this was put on, to help the audience learn, as Sean said, more about the dynamics, the strategies, and how to approach content. But Marcin, as you were pulling off this event, what did you find was a unique challenge in putting this particular event together? Something that's meant to teach and also entertain, as Sean said. If people are leaving their houses, they really want to come to something that will make them leave with joy and information. So what did you think about, and what in particular was unique when you were pulling this off?
Yeah, I think it's unique because it's very specific on one topic. And so I think it's a challenge and also an opportunity that we can really kind of get deep into the content. And I think having Sean's whole team and the studio present, that was really interesting and unique. And I think when you're looking at events, you have to make sure that the speakers are aligned with the audience. And I think I loved seeing the diversity in the speakers and in their expertise as well last week. So I think that was a huge kind of plus as well. And then looking at the different formats. So I think kind of breaking away from the traditional kind of keynote or panel, I think we really want to kind of switch it up a little bit, make the content a little more snack sized, digestible, quick, putting in a lot of breaks, a lot of opportunity for people to network. It was really refreshing to see people kind of meet new people, meet new friends, and network. That was really important as well.
Can I just jump on snack size, digestible, and quick? Sean, this I know was something that you were all about. You were like, no long events, no long segments. Can you speak a little bit about why you really wanted things to be quick and snappy?
Sure. The way I work to my team, I think, is probably equal parts exciting and annoying, which is that anytime we do anything new,
Yes.
it's never just, all right, let's go. It's, all right, we're going to do this differently than it's been done before. So let's get started on thinking about how we can, make something unique, not status quo, which is one of the rules of the studio, is status quo with a line through it. In other words, we don't do status quo. And so what we really wanted to do was sort of break down the concept of an event and build it back up from scratch to say, like, there's no preconceived notion of what a Globe Content Studio or even a Globe and Mail event should be. Let's just start from the bottom and work our way up. And so the first thing we did as part of that process is say, we're not going to do panel discussions and we're not going to do long keynotes because those are very typical to almost every business event that you go to. So we really wanted to just dispense with that. And then where we landed was, okay, to Marcin's point, short presentation. So we said like maximum 3 slides for the most part, no more than like 10 minutes. We had one presentation that was 15 minutes because we had 3 presenters in that case instead of 1 or 2. And that was sort of our meatiest session. But really what we wanted to do was make sure that people felt like if they weren't super interested in the session, they could stick around and watch it because within a few minutes, it was going to be off the stage and we would be on to something else. What we really wanted to emphasize was like interactivity. So we're going to give you some information that you need to sort of whet your appetite and understand where we're coming from and get some takeaways. But then let's leave some time at the end of every single session to engage with the audience. So we had like literal throw mics, like mics that we could toss to people within the audience so that they could ask us questions. And we could really have like a 2-way conversation, because the other thing we really wanted to do was say, we don't want to just talk at people, we want to talk with people. So we'll present a small amount of information, but impactful information, and then really make sure we give everybody in the audience a sense to like challenge us on stuff, to ask questions of us, to agree with us, to make just general comments, whatever the case may be. It was like an anything goes thing, because I also do like to fly by the seat of my pants a little bit and just sort of like see where things take us. And I know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but the team did a really good job of humoring me, right? Because we also had everybody on the team present, and not everybody's comfortable standing up in front of a bunch of people and yammering. I mean, I do it just sort of naturally, and it's not really fair for me to say, well, I can do it and so can you. I asked a lot of the team. I thought it was really important for everybody to participate, and a lot of people had to come outside their comfort zone in order to do that. So there were a lot of ways in which we rethought how to do things in the way that we wanted to do it, so that at the end of the day, we could be proud of ourselves, but also, sort of satisfied that we delivered on all the promises that we made to the audience, which Marcin and I have been detailing through this particular.
So part of this conversation that we're having is to help others who may be considering doing a similar event to encourage them or to things to consider. So it sounds like, Sean, even in your saying that there are some people who like to yammer and chat and others don't, you might have learned a few things as a producer of this event that you might offer as tips and tactics to others who are thinking about creating a similar event. Would that be true? And if it is, what are some of those learnings?
Yeah, I mean, I'd throw to Marcin almost immediately, because he was involved, but also was observing a little bit more than I was through the course of the day, just by the nature of the roles that we inhabited in this. Like, I was just sort of very deep in the process of getting this done, and Marcin was very involved in that holistic viewpoint, because of course we're going to want to try to do something again next year along the same lines. For me, there were 2 key takeaways. One was that because we did a lot of bite-sized formats, I kind of took my eye off the fact that maybe there were some other formats that we could have pursued in order to just mix it up a little bit through the course of the day. We did have like 1 or 2 sessions that were a little bit different than just like the 5-10 minute quick presentation. We had some quizzes and a couple of other elements that added a bit of a mix. But maybe next year we'll do maybe some like Q&As. We've been talking about maybe doing like a debate next year. So I think my one takeaway would be like, let's think a little bit more broadly about the ways in which people are presenting and really play to their strengths, right? So depending on what they're most comfortable doing when it comes to being on stage, let's let's actually think hard about how we can adapt the style of presentation to the person. And then secondarily, I think it was really important for us to have what I liked to call a Raptors game vibe. So I think next year we'd play music a little bit more extensively instead of cutting it off super quick to really like set the tone for each of the presentations. I think we could have extended that out a little bit longer. And, I'm looking for the right word, but I'd like to add like a little bit more spectacle to it so that it feels more like an entertainment event and not just a business event. I don't know how we're going to do that yet, but those are the two things that are going to be on my mind.
That's in your vision for next year. So you were mentioning that, Marcin, you had a kind of a bird's eye view of it. So, and you also heard from the audience about things that they took away from this event. Could you share a little bit about what you heard, even just anecdotally in your conversations with folks who were there, about what they received from the event in terms of information?
Yeah, I think as we're talking about, I think the networking opportunities were really good for people. I think we had a lot of breaks, and at the end, I saw a lot of people kind of hanging around and meeting people, so that really worked well for us as well. We had some cool merch as well, and like I don't have any kind of like huge takeaways on in terms of the merch. You'd think that kind of notebooks are a little bit boring, but I think those are the most popular thing that kind of went. I think
that's actually a tip. Like for those who are thinking of doing something, consider merch.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, notebooks and pens, I think people were taking notes. I think people were taking photos of the screens, and I think people were taking notes. I think it seems obvious, but I think that was one thing that really worked for us. We also had some other coffee mugs, some other kind of like merch that people could use after the event as well that we looked to do that was different as well. Yeah, so I think those are kind of the key kind of learnings, but we also send out a survey after our events, and I think it's really important for us to gather feedback from our attendees to see what worked, what didn't, and we can improve on that next year. So we can use that data to guide us and to I guess help us plan next year for sure.
So far I'm hearing in terms of some tips and takeaways is to consider having an advisory board kind of outside of the group to give you insights into what people are actually looking for when producing an event. Consider merch, consider formats, consider the people that are on stage and playing to their strengths. Those are some of the learnings. But Marcin, not everybody is going to have a trade marketing team to pull together an event. And so for those who don't, for maybe smaller shops, what advice would you have for them if they were interested in producing something that teaches and entertains and delights, but when we're also talking about content marketing?
Yeah, there's so many tools on the internet right now that you could use to put together a content or an event. So I think we're really lucky now to have these kind of at our fingertips. And also you can easily kind of like figure out what your audience is, what kind of content they're interested in through surveys, or really kind of ask your clients what they're going to be looking for. So I think there's a lot of easy ways to kind of get that information and start small. I don't think you need to have the top floor of the Globe and Mail Center as your event space. I think starting small is a really good tip for those small organizations.
So we did promise that we'd be offering some tips and takeaways for the audience. Those who were there might have heard this before, but it's good reinforcement. Those who weren't there, this is a sense and getting a sample of some of what people took away. And Sean, you did say you heard from the audience also. So if you can share a little bit about what people learned and what you also heard from the audience.
Sure. So first thing, kudos to you, Dayo, for giving us some summaries of the call so far. I like it.
I'm glad you like it.
Very much the way we
Thanks,
like to
Sean.
operate. More takeaways. It's good stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do is let people know that we did a blog post after this event was done, and I asked everybody who presented to give like 3 or more like sort of top takeaways, just so that people could have, kind of like a summary of the event and what took place at it. So I'll give 3 points that I think are some of the key points that we made. And then if we haven't already, before we wrap this up, we'll have a link to our website so that people can come and take a look at this. Within this blog post, you'll actually find a link to, at the very top of it, to the full event, a recording of it if you want to check it out. So 2 opportunities there. I'll frame this in the context of the way we like to frame things within the studio, which is ideation first and foremost, execution, and then measurement. So on the ideation side, I will give a tip that came from Jessica Robinson, who's our content lead. She did a session on how to tell authentic stories. And I think it's really important for other people to take this approach to storytelling, no matter who or where they're working. One is that representation has to permeate the entire production process. So that's the creators of your content, as well as the people who are going to be featured in the content, because storytellers tend to shape content from their own perspective, so that if they can relate to the content that you're creating and the people that you're talking to about that creation, you're going to get better content out of it as a result. On the execution side, I'm going to share something about podcasting because it's a really important area of development for the content studio. So this came from Kieran Rana, who's our executive podcast producer, and Kyle Fulton, who's our other podcast producer. And that is how much brand integration feels authentic, right? So if you're creating a podcast on behalf of a brand, you want to let your audience and the story lead the production and really integrate your brand in ways that complement the show rather than detract from it, because sometimes less is more. And then on the measurement side, this is where we had, the longer than 5-10 minute presentation. This came from Kirsty Ciccone, who's the senior manager of content marketing and strategic solutions, so part of our media strategy team. Jenna Del Bend, who's a lead on that media strategy team, and Vadim Senko, who's also one of our media strategists. And to me, this is a really important point, not just from a media side, but also from the studio standpoint, which is that there is no consistency with the way people measure content across the industry, the marketing industry. So in our particular viewpoint, it's important to hold your partners and other publishers accountable for transparency on the methodologies that they're using to make informed conclusions about the data that they're putting in front of you as a client on what success looks like. So those would be my 3 key takeaways.
I remember in being at the event that last session that Kirsty and her team were sharing was very hot. Like, a lot of people had a lot of questions about measurement. Do you have an insight into why people are so curious about it?
Because it's oftentimes the most important part of the whole process. And I'm the person who creates the content. So we have a saying within the studio, which is you can create the best content in the world, but if nobody sees it, it's useless.
Right.
So with that in mind, there are 3 incredibly important things that take place within the realm of the content studio. One is creativity. You have to have creativity in order to stand out, especially in an age of AI and other technologies that are disrupting creative industries now. Secondarily, you need to make sure that you've got the right people in place to produce the content that's going to succeed. In other words, you've got to have great designers, you've got to have great content leads, you've got to have great writers, videographers. All of those key positions need to be in place in order to be successful in creating the actual content itself. And then last but definitely not least is distribution, right? So again, if you're not getting the right content in the hands of the right people, in other words, your target audience, then your entire operation falls apart. So the importance of a media strategy team cannot be stressed enough. It's as important as the content team when it comes to running a content marketing studio.
So we're on our final question here, and I'm going to ask it to both you, Sean, and Marcin, but I'll ask you first, Sean. You had mentioned that this event, and it really was an effort to, and I appreciated that as someone who was working on it and who has been a part of lots of events, to have a conversation, not talking at the audience, but hearing from the audience also, a two-way chat. So were there takeaways outside of the advisory board and outside of what was shared that you received from the audience that you're going to take away as you think about the next TNT, if it's, or TNT times 2 or whatever you're going to call it?
Yeah, that's a good question, because you're setting me up to toot my own horn.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not doing that. I'm actually, no, not just tooting your horn. It could be, but Sean, you had said that this could be good and not so good feedback because you're
No, totally. My point is merely that most of the feedback that we got was very positive, and right. I'm the most transparent person in the world, as the team knows. So I say that with a high degree of honesty. I really didn't get a whole lot in the way of things to think about for next year. We're, as Marcin pointed out, waiting to get feedback from the survey that we put out, because I think, if I'm again to be honest, a lot of people want to say that you did a good job. Privately, they may have some thoughts on ways you can do things better, and it's easier for them to send you those thoughts retroactively instead of giving them to you at the time. I think the one thing that a couple of people mentioned to me is that they felt like because it was so fast paced, not that it was exhausting to sit there, with only the one break in the middle, but that we may want to consider doing like, say, 3 sessions at a time, having a short break, another session, short break, and then another session. So instead of having
the
one more
programming could
extended
be
break,
tweaked a bit.
yeah, so that was number one. And then number two, I would say if we could have a little bit more interactivity within those breaks, I think people would appreciate that too. So when the speakers come off stage, instead of having to ask questions in front of the full room, which can be intimidating for people, to have a chance to like sort of in an official way catch up with some of the speakers that just came off the stage, to be able to like go out in the hallway and like maybe stand in a circle and just have an informal conversation would be another, I think, nice way to add some engagement in and take a little bit of the pressure off of the need to engage within the confines of the full room.
So Marcin, I'm coming to you next with that same question, but from my observation, I noted that there were a lot of younger people who were really excited to learn from the Globe Content Studio, and just people who came from far distances to participate in something that they believed would help them with their career. And I personally was really proud of that, to be a part of something that I felt when you walked away that there were younger people, new professionals, or even professionals that are already in the game for a while, that are walking away with some good education that they can help with, that can help them with their work. So I was really pleased with that, and I got a chance to talk to people at the end who were really excited to meet everyone at the Globe Content Studio. But Marcin, from your perspective, I know we're waiting on the data and the stats and the surveys, but just your own vibes and what you heard, what were some takeaways that you got from the audience?
Yeah, I think I like the breakout kind of idea. I think because the topic is so niche and we have a very niche audience, we can get even deeper on some of those topics. So I think looking at some performance Q&A, like that was a really engaging session that we had. And I was also inspired by the young marketers in the room as well. And there could be opportunity for mentorship sessions as well. So have some of our leaders there, some of our other experts, and have that kind of one-on-one opportunity for them to network with them and really kind of get some guidance and some words of advice. So I think we have such a breadth of expertise on the Content Studio team that they all bring something different. And I think just outlining that and giving those opportunities where people can get even deeper on a topic and meet those subject matter experts, I think is going to be really key for next year as well.
Well, thank you for actually ending it that way, Marcin, because my next...
I shouldn't be shaping any young minds. That is probably a
that is actually... I'm glad you said it, Sean, because I wasn't going to say it.
Don't be like Sean.
I'm glad that you said it. But minds can get shaped by following the blog post that we have been talking about, where a lot of these tips and tactics are written out and there for you to take away so that you can learn more about what you can do to improve your content, or just to, make it a little more sparkly, if you will. And also, we didn't talk much about this, Sean, so maybe just 30 seconds on the Next in Creative report that was produced earlier this year, which is available for download. You can just give us a quick high-level update on that as we close out.
So Next in Creative, I would describe as our flagship white paper. That's not a white paper, because I hate the term white paper because it implies that it's boring. It is our flagship report of the year. Essentially, what we do is try to cast forward what we expect are going to be the trends in marketing generally. Content marketing, yes, but also just sort of broadly speaking within the marketing realm. Identify 5 or 6 topics that we expect to be somewhat future forward, and then dig into them from a research perspective. So our content lead, Jessica Robinson, steered it this year and assigned certain individuals to the topics that were most suited to their talents and their knowledge bases. And they did their research, they did some writing. We put it into a lovely PowerPoint presentation, which is now available and which we have shared in the channel. And it's an opportunity for you to see what we think is coming next and what you need to be ready for as a marketer, because you always want to be prepared for what's coming so that you're not playing catch up, that you're ahead of the game instead of, with it or behind it.
So the Next in Creative report was actually also used as a bit of inspiration for some of the topics that were produced rather for the TNT event in April, which Sean said will be coming back next year. No date yet, but continue to follow Globe Content Studio for updates on that. I want to thank Sean and Marcin for participating in this conversation. Thank you both.
Thank you.
No, it was great. It was a good chat. And be sure to subscribe to Studio Vibes, which is a newsletter for more thought leadership on all things content marketing. And follow us at Globe Content Studio on LinkedIn. We're planning another great show next month, kind of wrapping up our season. We definitely have one in May, possibly one in June. Follow us for more on that. Have a fabulous day, everyone, and bye for now.
Thanks.
Bye.